The trip turned a corner in my life. The trip was tying together my youth, my stories, my experiences, all in 1-2 week time frame. And it closed the loop on a lot of questions that I had. So now I can say I fully understand my heritage and I understand my ancestry much better than I did before. Because at some point, we all have to ask ourselves, at some point in time, who am I and where do I come from? And if we want to really delve into it, we could find a big surprise in our heritage. It is profoundly unique. This is my attempt at a narrative history of our American Tatar heritage, specifically that of the Poland, Lithuanian, and Belarus Tatars who settled in Brooklyn, New York in the early 1900s. I've always had a curiosity about my heritage, but the knowledge obtained through family lore lacked the details I desired. My interest was piqued in 2018 while preparing for a heritage trip to the countries of Poland, Lithuania, and Belarus with a small group of fellow American Tatars. Trip organizers were Jack and Marian Sidorowitz of the Muslim Mosque in Brooklyn, New York. I am forever grateful for their foresight and for including my fellow travelers, my sister Arlene, and me in the trip. This video series is intended to provide the ancestral history of American Tatar families who immigrated to New York and established the Muslim Mosque at 104 and 106 Powers Street in Brooklyn. These Tatars from Poland, Lithuania, and Belarus are often referred to as Lipka or Polish-Lithuanian Tatars and represent a very small and unique ethnicity within the larger Tatar world. An interesting fact is that the original organization of the New York Tatars was named Lithuanian Tatar Society and was formed in February of 1907. The mosque on Power Street was opened in 1920s under the organizational name of the American Mohammedan Society, Incorporated. I hope you'll find that we have a remarkable history dating back to the 13th century. In 1965, I had occasion to visit Izmir, Turkey, a major city on the Eastern Mediterranean. It was my first experience with large gatherings of Muslims outside the USA. My host, a friend of the family, introduced me to members of the Tatar Turk community in a public marketplace in Konak, the historical district, and we were quickly surrounded by well-wishers who welcomed me as one of their own. A similar reception was repeated in a nearby mosque. The visit was a unique and heartfelt experience. However, it would be surpassed in 2018 when I visited Poland, Lithuania, and Belarus, which I will henceforth refer to as the PLB. This video series is by no means a complete history of the Tatars. However, it will span events of 800 years from 1200 to 2018 and the geography from the Far East to the Balkans. In this video, we'll touch upon the migrations and military campaigns of Genghis Khan and the empire he created from Central Asia to Eastern Europe, the rise and fall of the Golden Horde, and the Tatar settlement in the Commonwealth. While some dates are approximate, all are respectfully presented as historic milestones for purposes of our heritage. References used will be included at the end of this video. Also, in the spirit of our American Tatar predecessors and the Brooklyn Mosque, I will use the term Muslim in lieu of Muslim. Tatars are considered to be part of a Turkic race which originated in Central Asia. The Tatar Khanate existed for centuries prior to the rise of Genghis Khan. However, the Khanate was not necessarily the ancestral root associated with Tatars today. Tatars are categorized into three dominant types. They are the Crimean, Kazan, and Siberian Tatars. Tatars of the PLB, our Tatars, are associated with the Crimean Tatars. These distinctions are corroborated by DNA testing. DNA studies have been publicly published, but most are in non-English languages. The references section includes 2 research papers written in English. They both conclude the linkage of PLB Tatars to Genghis Khan and the Golden Horde. However, they are still in the process of verification at the time of this video is being produced. Tatars were nomads and herders of the vast Asian steppes. The Mongol armies, which later conquered much of the world, had their roots in these wanderers of Central Asia. Their lifestyle demanded they be mobile and travel light as they continually moved with their herds to seasonal pastures. They were excellent horsemen, adept at breeding and training animals while thriving in separate tribal clans. Once established in a new location, each group had to remain alert for raids from neighboring tribes bent on stealing women, children, and livestock. This lifestyle and skill set prepared them for their destiny as warriors under the rule of Genghis Khan. As Genghis Khan grew in power and his victories pushed westward, his army absorbed the people of his growing empire, including other Turkic peoples such as Kipchak, Scythians, and others. In recent years, scientists have analyzed the migration patterns of these people in more detail using language, script on headstones, and most importantly, DNA. Unfortunately, most of the written record was destroyed by Russia and the Soviets during 2 world wars, so we have little documented history of the Tatars. Tatar DNA studies have helped to identify tribal components and their historic locations. Analysis shows that Tatars of Poland, Lithuania, and Belarus originate from Crimean Tatars and are typically referred to as Lipka Tatars. The name Lipka is derived from the old Crimean Tatar name of Lithuania and doesn't have a corresponding term in current language. However, it is used in historical documentation. As a people, Lipka Tatars exhibit physical features of those from Central Asia, but have many European cultural influences which resulted from the Western campaigns of the Mongol Empire. Today, Tatars make up about 3% of the 200 million worldwide Turkic population. Crimean Tatars make up less than 10% of the total Tatar population. As seen on this chart, created with 2011 census data and other sources on the internet, the total worldwide Tatar population is about 6.6 million people. The Volga population makes up the largest category of Tatar with more than 2 million people. Crimean Tatars number about 500,000 people. Our shared American Tatar heritage is from approximately 500 emigres who migrated to Brooklyn, New York in the early 1900s from the PLB. My father and both my maternal grandparents were part of these 500 immigrants. Lipka Tatars can also be found in Latvia, Southeast Estonia, and Western Russia. This separation from the PLB Tatars is a direct result of treaties resulting from 2 world wars and the changing borders of newly formed nation-states during the establishment of the USSR and the repartition of countries following the fall of the USSR. The Tatars, like all other inhabitants, went with the land. Let's go back and trace the origins of our Lipka Tatar history, as it's important to understand our culture. Genghis Khan's birth name was Temujin, and he lived from 1158 to 1227. He was a Mongol and religiously a pagan. His rise to power started by attacking a neighboring tribe in the Tatar Khanate, or the Tatar region, in 1196 to avenge the poisoning death of his father. Following his victory, he recruited many of the Tatar survivors into his army. He then continued to expand his reach by defeating other nearby tribes and continuing to absorb their soldiers into his own army. Genghis Khan's sons became the top leaders of his empire, but the generals came from the ranks of the army, many of them Tatars. The Khan's vision was to unite separate, warring Mongol tribes. Once in control, he mandated massive communal activities. One example was the Great Hunt, an annual event requiring all tribes to participate. It took place over many hundreds of square miles. The tribes were positioned around a perimeter and at a predetermined time drove wild animals in their path to a central site. Successful execution called for coordination and communication over a vast area. Captured animals were sorted out and assigned to tribes. The Khan then instituted responsibilities for rival herders to protect the stock and encourage communal property. The hunt was followed by a big celebration with horse races and other competitions such as wrestling and archery. A similar annual event continues today. Over time, use of the word Mongol would decrease and was replaced with Tatar. In the absence of national borders, subsequent conquered tribes were also absorbed into Tatar. As warriors, history shows that Tatars were fierce and unrelenting in battle. However, their success was anything but random, as it followed a well-thought-out, low-risk strategy, and they were completely committed to victory. The Tatar warriors were excellent horsemen who were trained to ride since infancy. They were easily organized to form a light cavalry, which is the root strength of a fast-moving army. The Khan unleashed these mounted warriors on a massive scale with unprecedented success. Using multiple horses, the army could travel up to 60 miles a day. Their speed was so uncommon for the day that they typically surprised their enemies despite advance warning. These fighters and their small, hardy horses proved to be the backbone of the greatest empire of their time. Prior to battles, kingdoms were offered a choice to surrender or be attacked. Those that surrendered to the Khan agreed to pay a tribute and obey his wishes, and they were permitted to continue their lifestyle and religion. Those kingdoms that chose to fight endured an all-out assault. Following their defeat, the kingdom's leaders were often killed, a new government was imposed, and a standing army was left in the defeated kingdom for enforcement purposes. Just before a city was defeated, some survivors were intentionally allowed to flee. They spread the word of the fierce nature of the Mongol army and the doom coming their way if they did not surrender. European descriptions of the Mongols characterize the invaders of monsters and cannibals, which spread fear and dismay among the future targets of the Mongol Empire. Royal women held a special and unique place in the Mongol Empire, not common for this time period. While the Khan and his army were expanding the empire westward, they were away from their homeland for long stretches of time. The Khan empowered his wives and daughters to manage and administer the homeland and certain conquered territories while he was on campaign. They were responsible for collecting taxes and imposing social order and enjoyed absolute power in the absence of the Khan. This freed the Khan, his sons, and his generals to remain on long campaigns and ensured that the homeland was in the hands of people he had trusted. In 1221, the Khan divided the empire amongst his sons. His eldest son, Yoki Khan, was assigned territories to the west beyond the Caucasus Mountains and empowered to conquer lands. Yoki Khan set off on a 3-year campaign. In 1223, Yoki's army appeared in Eastern Europe and quickly defeated a combined Georgian and Allied force. He moved to the Ukraine, and his force destroyed an alliance of numerous Russian princes. He then returned home to Mongolia to report his findings to Genghis Khan. 14 years later, Yoki's oldest son, Batu, was elevated to the title of Khan of Western Territory. In the next 6 years, Batu and his army subdued Russia, Poland, Silesia, Hungary, Serbia, and Bulgaria. This campaign marks the formation of the Golden Horde. The Horde could have continued into Central Europe, but history shows they stopped their advance in Hungary. It is believed Batu and the Golden Horde discontinued their westward expansion for several reasons, but most importantly, it was at this time that Batu learned of the death of the Great Khan and returned to Mongolia. Under the new Khan, Ogadai, new priorities were set, and the Mongols would no longer expand their empire. Instead, he would focus their attention on the wealth of China and control of trade tariffs along the Silk Road. Ogadai initiated a period of peace in Eurasia called the Pax Mongolica, or sometimes Pax Tatarka, during the 13th and 14th centuries. An interesting fact is that Beijing was once referred to as Tatar City. Ogadai provided security to support trade and economic development, charging fees for secure travel along the Great Silk Road, a stark contrast to their brutal raids of the past. Caravan traffic included the exchange of jewelry, paper, metals, and spices, horses, and slaves. Commercial traffic also carried books from the Middle East, India, and China, with new knowledge in mathematics, science, medicine, engineering, and architecture, all contributing to the Renaissance in Europe. Russia was effectively bypassed from these riches as the road made its way along a southerly route from Asia to Europe. The empire of Genghis Khan was divided into separate territories, or khanates, ruled by his descendants. The Golden Horde, which largely ruled Russia and Eastern Europe, became separated from the Mongol Empire as this territory was not of value in the trade associated with the Silk Road. Nonetheless, the Golden Horde's control continued for centuries. Batu was the first in a succession of no fewer than 30 Khans of the Golden Horde that dominated Russia and Eastern Europe for more than 200 years. Historians refer to this time as the Tatar Yoke. The territory was large and extended from Eastern Europe in the west to the Ural Mountains in the east. Batu established a governing bureaucracy and ruled his empire remotely from Sarai in Astrakhan, which is on the Volga River in southern Russia. He gave Russian agents significant power to manage Russian landovers. He made the agents responsible for collecting tribute and conscripting troops for the army of the Golden Horde. His successors continued Batu's form of governing, but over time the Russian agents began to consolidate and gain power, consolidating their power under the great princes of Russia. Eventually, this ate away at Mongol authority and opened the door for the Russians to throw off the Tatar yoke. Let's diverge for a moment to address an important milestone in the culture of the Tatars of the Golden Horde, and later of the Lipka Tatars. Batu Khan's brother, Berke, was one of the first Mongols to convert to Sunni Islam in 1252. He was intrigued by Islamic beliefs of the Mamluk Turks of southern Russia, a race once controlled by the Golden Horde. Berke would later command the Golden Horde between 1257 and 1267. Because he was the Khan, many of the men in the Golden Horde followed his lead in converting to Islam. Other Khanates of the original Mongol Empire eventually converted to Islam as well. Some selected the Sunni sect of Islam, others Shia, the other major sect. Still others continued to follow shamanism, which was the predominant religion of the Mongols prior to Islam. Throughout the centuries, Islam remained as the religion of the Tatar descendants of the Golden Horde. As stated earlier, Russian princes began to rebel against the Tatar yoke. In 1380, Grand Prince Dmitry openly defied Tatar rule. The Mongols responded quickly, but its army was defeated in battle. However, in 1382, another army led by Toktamish Khan returned to retake Moscow and restore Mongol rule, which continued into the 1400s. Toktamish Khan was commander of the Blue Horde, who merged his army with remnants of the Golden Horde. Although he was a lower prince, he was recognized as a descendant of the Great Khan and ruled from 1378 to 1395. He pulled together an army of 50,000 soldiers to wage war with his former ally, Tamerlane. Tamerlane, also known as Timur, was not related to Genghis Khan, but he was a great conqueror who founded the Timurid Empire and controlled lands of Turkestan, Afghanistan, Persia, Syria, Kurdistan, Baghdad, Georgia, and Asia Minor. Tamerlane is not central to our ancestral history, except for the fact that he fought and defeated Tokhtamysh and the Golden Horde in the area of the Ukraine in 1385. Prior to the Tokhtamysh War with Tamerlane, Tokhtamysh bolted his army through an alliance with Prince Vytautas of Lithuania. This alliance proved critical in the formation of what we now call the Lipka, or Lithuanian Tatars. The Golden Horde was eventually defeated and weakened by Tamerlane and lost control of much of its land. However, it continued to be governed by Tatar Khans for another 100 years. Despite losing to Tamerlane, Prince Vytautas of Lithuania admired the fighting abilities and the loyalty of the Tatars and saw great value in adding their cavalry troops to his own Lithuanian army. In 1397, King Vytautas and Tokhtamysh Khan signed a treaty in which Tokhtamysh pledged his army to defend the Commonwealth of Lithuania. He recognized Vytautas as the rightful king of former Tatar territories that were once ruled by the Golden Horde. In exchange for their military service, the Tatars would settle in Lithuania and continue to practice their chosen religion, Islam. Each Tatar swore to defend the Commonwealth of Lithuania, and each was rewarded with land and title for their military service. The treaty provided for the creation of Tatar nobility and civilian titles matching their military rank. Under this treaty, Tokhtamysh moved to the Commonwealth of Lithuania with his entourage of emirs, princes, soldiers, and their families. The key areas in which they settled were Vilnius, Kaunas, and Trakai, which are in current-day Lithuania, and Horodna, which is in current-day Belarus. The Khan himself settled in Lyda, in today's Belarus. An interesting point is that Lyda is just 25 miles from the town of Evia in Belarus, which is recognized as the hub of many Lipka Tatars who immigrated to the United States. During the 1400s, the Golden Horde broke up along tribal lines. The Sibir, or Siberian tribe, broke away in 1405. The Kazan tribe broke away in 1438. The Astrakhans in 1466. And the Crimean Tatars finally broke away in 1486. As noted earlier, Tatars of the PLB originate from the Crimean Khanate. Today, DNA offers scientists detailed insight into the origins of people. Recent DNA studies have documented the current distribution of Tatars through Europe and Asia. These modern studies illustrate the continued existence of transplanted Lipka Tatars in the PLB. In this chart, the Lipkas are referred to as the Belarusian Tatars with purple color code. Take note of the very small geographic area still populated with Belarusian or Lipka Tatars. These are the people with whom we share our history. In closing, our predecessors were established in the PLB 100 years before Columbus came to America. The history of the Crimean Tatars, from whom we descend, goes back to the time of Genghis Khan in the late 1200s. Our ancestors were warriors, conquerors, administrators, and respected the value of women in their society. Above all, they maintained their cultural and religious values throughout the centuries, which is still evident in our people today.